Thanks for checking out today's episode of The Experience Curve, where we explore the personal journeys of accomplished individuals, breaking down the steps they took to get where they are, which I hope just might inspire you on your own path forward. Today, I'm joined by Emily Zorn, the visionary founder of Emily RD Nutrition Coaching and co-host of the RDs vs. BS podcast. Emily's journey from leaving a stable job to diving headfirst into entrepreneurship during a pandemic is as real as it gets. In this conversation, she shares her journey from working with professional athletes to guiding everyday individuals towards sustainable and personalized eating habits. Emily is dedicated to empowering others to break free from diet culture and embrace a science-based approach to nutrition. From moments of doubt and uncertainty to the exhilarating highs of success, Emily's journey is one that hits close to home for anyone who's ever pursued their passions. Hey, Emily, thank you so much for your time today, for joining me on the show, and just for, sharing, what you've learned in this whole world of nutrition. I'm excited to kind of jump into this, and I think people will gain a lot just from reading about you and the connection we had offline. You have a lot of good energy, and I'm really excited to kind of jump into this with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
Yeah, this would be great. And I think, for people listening, nutrition. It's not like, you're obviously a young girl, right? Like what sort of sparked this initial interest in nutrition for someone like yourself? Was it something in college? Was it, family, friends? What brought you into this sort of world to begin with?
Sure. So I always just had a passion for food, even when I was little. Like I remember going to the library when I was 10 and getting all the cookbooks I could. And then I would make my family a meal once a week based on, cookbooks from around the world. So I just always thought that food was so interesting. And then when I was going to college, I had to pick a major. I was looking at, all the different things you can major in. And when I saw nutrition, I just remember thinking, this doesn't even sound like work. This sounds like fun. I can't believe I get to learn about nutrition and make a career out of it. So yeah, so I went down that path, and it led me to where I am today.
Yeah, college is tough because I think a lot of people go in there thinking, oh, maybe it's what they thought they wanted to do in fifth grade, or and you kind of go in and then you realize, oh, wait a minute, this is not even what I thought it was going to be. Or sometimes it could just be a bad professor. So I think there's a good, you sometimes it's the experience you have just learning from that institution that makes you turned off about it versus something that inspires you there to kind of, something you wouldn't have ever thought about. So you just sort of always had this sort of, track. Was it something where you said, okay, I had friends or family or something where was it fast food? Was it something about nutrition that you knew why you wanted to do it?
Yeah. So I think, thinking back, I always thought I just had a normal upbringing, like, oh, everyone grows up like this. But my parents, I grew up in Ohio, and for being in Ohio, they were kind of open to alternative things. I realized, like, they were very much into, like, I remember we would eat sushi. They sent me to school with sushi in like second grade, and everyone thought that was the weirdest thing ever. Now sushi is so popular. There's that. They were into composting and organic food and all of that. And I'm not super like woo woo myself, like a little bit,
Yeah.
but for Ohio in the 90s, they were out there. So now I just kind of realized, thinking back on that, like, yeah, they always really, I remember getting McDonald's sometimes, and every Sunday we'd have like Sunday drinks, which was, you could pick one soda. We called it pop because we're from
Sure.
Ohio,
Yeah.
but you could pick one pop and drink it, and that was your soda for the whole week. So then, you grow up and realize not everyone was raised that way. So I do have to, I have my parents to thank for my interest in different types of foods and nutrition and just being healthy in general.
Yeah, because I think I grew up in the Northeast, and there's Certainly, I don't know where the highest obesity rates are in the country by region. Or, I know Northeast probably is up there. So I grew up in New Jersey. I lived in Philadelphia.
Mhm.
That sort of Northeast, you have a lot of, the cheesesteaks and the fries and the, everything's deep fried or pretzels,
Sure.
right? So you kind of grow up with that mentality of, you're not as conscious of it, but like you said, Ohio's not that different from my perspective or my, I guess my memory of living in the area. My mom was born in actually born in Ohio.
Nice.
Yeah, and I have friends that still live there in Columbus. The diets, I think, in certain towns or certain again regions can dictate how you grow up. So like, but I come from California, right? And my daughter,
Okay.
yeah, my daughter, remember she was in kindergarten and her friend came over after school one day, and again, these are, I don't know, 5, 6 year old kids, and the friend looks at me and she says, "Can we get food?" And I was like, "Of course." Like, what do you want? Like, she's like, "Can we order something?" I'm like, "Sure." Like pizza. She's no. Can we get sushi? And I was like,
Oh,
this little 6 year old kid, I'm like, oh, it just blew my mind, that okay, I'm in like
only out here.
I'm in California. Yeah, like this is a whole different mindset shift in how kids are raised and how their parents are not like, hey, here's a TV dinner, here's a microwave meal, here's a pizza, let's order, here's some soda. Same difference, and I'm definitely not
Mhm.
about the soda in our house as much as my daughter wants it, but not a fan.
Sure.
So that's cool that your parents sort of had those, I guess you would call them alternative for, like you said,
Well,
Ohio in the
yeah,
90s.
for Ohio, very much so.
So from there you kind of jump into college, right? And were you at a Big Ten school? Is that sort of how you started working in like athletic departments?
Yeah, so my undergrad was Syracuse University. So I didn't do so much with sports nutrition at the time. I did take some exercise science classes because I knew that I wanted to do something with overall health and not just go strict nutrition. So it started a little there, but my real focusing in on sports nutrition happened in grad school, which was at Ohio State. So, yes, Big Ten school there. Yeah, and that's really where I started actually working with athletes and seeing what a you know Big Ten Power Five nutrition department looks like, and didn't even know it existed before then. And it's even since, gosh, that was 2015 when I started grad school. Even since then, it has grown to sports nutrition across the U.S. Every school has at least one dietitian and some sports nutrition department. So it's exciting to see how much it's grown.
And what are those departments like? Because someone like myself, you see college football on the weekend, and obviously tens and 70,000 people, and at these games, and you're like, oh my gosh, these facilities must be state of the art. What's it like? Even almost nine or so years ago. What's it like walking into these facilities? Like, what do they look like? What's the experience? Is it as high tech as I'm thinking?
Sure. So it definitely depends where you are. So right now, I'm in California. I live in Palo Alto. My husband's the director of sports nutrition for Stanford. So I know what theirs looks like. To be honest, compared to Ohio State, not quite the same. Ohio State is football or die. So they put all of their money into that. Stanford's is very nice. In general, like no matter where you go, there's going to be, I mean, this we work with the strength coaches, but like they have their area, which is all of the weights and all of that stuff. But then in these weight rooms is typically like a little corner where there's a fueling station, and that's pretty much where the dietitian and all of the interns and students and people they hire, they work there, and that's where you can interface with the athletes. And it's pretty amazing, like the amount of food that they have access to before, during, after practice. And then that's just for training and practice. They also get fed in athlete specific dining halls. It's pretty incredible. It depends on the school, especially with the NIL stuff recently. There's so much more money in athletics in general that it's helping nutrition as well. We're having more money to work with, but it depends on the school and where you are, how much money you're getting for your program. But yeah, it's pretty impressive no matter where you go. The athletes are getting treated very well with nutrition.
And so what was like your role, like even at that collegiate level? Because I want to get into like, when you transition to like the MLB, but like what was your role at that level of, again, huge amount of fans, huge amount of revenue behind it. What are you doing in that sort of role?
So after grad school, my first full-time job was at University of Illinois, and I worked mostly with the basketball teams at that time. So pretty much what you're doing is you're going to every practice, you're going to every game, you're making sure that the athletes are fueled before, during, and after. It really, for a team like basketball, you can really get in the weeds and say this specific athlete needs this specific amount of carbs and protein after. So we're blending up shakes. We're providing them with collagen shots to help with, preventing injury. We're encouraging them to take, you know, healthy and recommended supplements like omega-3s and vitamin D and all of this stuff that's based off of blood draws. And we're helping we do a lot of working with chefs at the athlete dining halls across campus to make sure that no matter what, if the athlete needs to gain weight, lose weight, maintain whatever it is, that they have options. And then a big piece is also traveling. You're traveling with the team a lot of the time if you're working with a basketball or football team, and setting up those meals on the road. So it's a lot of work, but I loved every minute that I was really we call it like in the trenches of collegiate and professional sports nutrition, because it doesn't feel like a job. Like, it's really fun and really rewarding to work with these athletes. But yeah, it's a lot of hours. Like, you're putting in the time, but it's also very fun.
Well, especially if you're traveling, right? Because I mean, I'm assuming
Yeah.
most of it's within the same time zone to a degree, but you're crossing that. It's still airplanes and hotels and checking in, checking, right? So
Yeah.
you have that on the road kind of lifestyle where you're, again, trying to keep these athletes at their sort of pristine shape, condition for each game. And so when you're talking to these athletes and you're sort of sitting down, I don't know if you got a lot of one-on-one back then, but is it also kind of getting their input, like what their body feels? What is their body telling them?
Yes, that's something I had to learn throughout. You're not really taught this in school, but once I started working with athletes, yeah, I started off just kind of being bigger picture person. And then I realized, some of these athletes really do need one-on-one attention. So I'd sit down with them and really just try to see things from their perspective. Jumping ahead a little, but a story I like to tell is when my first year working in the Chicago Cubs organization, I started off at the very bottom of minor league. It was the Class A short season team. So it's, just a 3-month season. I was out in Eugene, Oregon. These guys, a lot of them, about 80%, mostly spoke Spanish and had never been to the US before.
Hmm.
So I'm giving them all of these, which on paper, this food that is, oh, it's so healthy. It's salads and roasted broccoli. And they were not eating any of it. And so, that was a learning opportunity. Like, I need to get to know these guys first. So we're chatting and they're telling me, I've never eaten raw vegetables before. So, asking them, like, what do you like? What foods are you used to eating? And we can work with that. So that's a specific story, but that just did teach me that that's a huge important part, is getting to know each athlete on an individual level. And that's a piece of sports nutrition too, is that each athlete has their own goals. So making sure they, trying to educate them so that all this food we're offering, they know what to grab to reach their goals.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people probably more so maybe before, like you said, the NIL stuff popped up. These athletes were sort of treated like machines, right? They make revenue,
Yeah.
right, when they play, and here's what to eat, here's what to do, and you're kind of conditioning a machine, right? And you forget the human element. And okay, like these guys you're talking about in Eugene, hey, I don't even eat this stuff, so you're gonna have to find something else. You have to get creative, I'm assuming. So there's that sort of, I don't know, creativity aspect that comes into something that you do, where you're like, okay, yeah, I was going to give this person this, but now I have to sort of think outside the box of how can I get that person the same nutrients with foods they like,
Mm-hmm.
which could be, again, like regional. I grew up, probably be, not the best food for you.
Sure. But we could work with that. And I've taken that mindset into what I do today because it did just open my eyes to how individual each person is. Like you learn a specific set of, rules in school, like this is what people need. And then you realize there are a million cultures out there and everyone is used to eating a different way. So, yeah, so now not to jump ahead too much, but like in what I like to do, I don't like to be like, I am the nutrition expert, so I tell you what to eat. It's half that, but half you tell me what you're already eating, what you like eating, what you have time to cook and prepare and eat throughout the day. And we meet somewhere in the middle because I find that just helps so much with long term. And, all my work with athletes helped me learn a lot of that because you're pretty fresh coming out of school. You have all the knowledge, but none of the experience.
Oh, there you go. Experience. Yeah, that's a huge, component of it. And I think I read one time that the old school food pyramid that they would show people in element should it be like flipped upside down, where like you're not having
Yeah,
four
right.
starches a day. So there's kind of that
Uh-huh.
component to like what were we taught,
Yeah.
decades ago versus what has shown to be, not as effective, not the best advice. So how do you like transition from do you get to move up from what was it, AAA or
Yeah. So my first season was short season. So it's not even a full baseball season. And then my second season with the Cubs, I was at AAA. So that's the one right
okay.
below the majors. So yeah, that was a big jump and super exciting because we'd get a lot of guys from the majors who were rehabbing. They'd come and pitch with our team or like be there for a couple weeks. So that was fun. It was exciting. And yeah, it was just kind of a seasonal job too. Like I just did that during the summer. So to have someone come back for more than 1 year, like that's how I was able to jump up so quickly because I think the only one that had repeated years. So yeah, it was cool to see both ends of minor league baseball. The first team that the guys go to versus the step above the majors.
Yeah, it is cool when they come back and do like like you said the rehab assignments, and you get to see these guys in these little fields and just the small crowds and seeing like a big band in a little club. You're like, okay, that
Exactly.
sounds cool. So, but then at some point, what was like the turning point for you when you decided, okay, like I'm an employee of whatever institution, university, whatever it might be, I want to kind of go out and branch off into my own, right? And making that transition from, these collegiate, these, professional athletes to, one-on-one, clientele that you work in sort of a private practice. Like how did that transition come about?
Sure. So it really started around, I think it was 2019 when I'd been in sports for a while. That's when I was working with University of Illinois and like giving it my all. I was exhausted, but like fairly happy. But I remember thinking back then, I don't know if I want to do this for the rest of my career. Like I am in my mid 20s and I am exhausted. I can't imagine doing this forever. And it had been in the back of my mind to start a private practice really from the beginning, but I'd kind of told myself, oh, I need to get experience first. If, I need to actually be out there before I do it. So my timeline was really shortened when it was 2020 and my fiance at the time had accepted the job at Stanford. And we decided, okay, we're going to drive across the country from Illinois to California, and then COVID happened while we were driving. So yeah, so I just quit my job. Nothing's open. I mean, I don't know if you were in California in
Yes.
2020, but everything was shut down. So no one's hiring. And I just kind of realized, now might be a great time to start a private practice and see what happens. And luckily, the timing worked out great. And I don't know if I hadn't had that push of you're not getting any other job for at least a year from COVID, I don't know if I would have started it so early, but I'm so glad I did. And that's something I like to share with others is, you know, maybe some people would disagree with me, but I feel like if you want to do something, it's never too early to start. Like I had just told myself that I need 10 years of experience before doing a private practice. And that wasn't true. You have things to offer people, and you do kind of learn along the way as well.
Yeah, so the pandemic, right, that hits, which is crazy that it's hit as you're basically making this move where you're like, okay, now what? But now you're like kind of thrust into becoming an entrepreneur. Like I need to start my own thing. So what do you think that taking back the lessons that you learned from that not even 4 years ago were the most impactful on you in this journey so far?
Yeah, so anyone who's, yeah, I know you have a dietitian friend, and anyone who went through school to be a dietitian knows we don't learn a thing about business, entrepreneurship, anything at all. So, yeah, I just kind of looked at it as this is a big project. I have a lot of time on my hands, but that only got me so far. And I realized like I do want some guidance. So I did hire a business coach who she wasn't a dietitian. She was actually a life coach, but was super successful. And she really helped me like point my way and kind of focus in on what I needed to learn. But yeah, I kind of learned, well, a big piece of all of this was as a recovering perfectionist, you don't always have to do A plus work. I really had to get that in my mindset that everything doesn't have to be perfectly aligned for you to start taking clients or for you to start your business. And that it's okay to put things out there that are maybe closer to B work. When it comes to one-on-one work with clients, like still, I'm giving it my all. It's A plus work. But when it comes to like marketing stuff and social media, like I kind of learned to give up on being perfect, or else I would never put anything out there. So early on, that was probably my biggest lesson was don't try to be perfect, because it's, more important that the info is out there. It doesn't have to look exactly amazing and all of that. So yeah, that's probably lesson number one.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. It's something where, especially in the industry you're in, it's probably not the most typical. Like, okay, I'm a business owner, I'm an entrepreneur, right? Most people think, okay, you're like this. You're kind of coming across in coming across the country, right? Literally, into this world where you're like thrusted into a new environment. Plus, you're having to put
Mm-hmm.
this business together, right? And then when you sort of throw in, okay, because you have a business and it's 2020, social media, you need a brand, you need a logo, you need a website, you need, right, all the brand messaging, all these sort of components, which I think hiring a coach is a very, very smart idea for people because you can't do everything yourself. So how did that coach, again, life coach, business coach, whoever it might be, how did that person help shape the brand that you have today?
Yeah, what I really liked about her was she said a lot of things that was opposite of what everyone else was saying. So she really helped me realize that, and this worked for me and my business, but that I didn't have to niche down so much like every other dietitian was doing. She said instead, like, if there are people who want to work with you, you're excited about their goals, and you like speaking to them, why wouldn't you take them on? Like, why would you say no? So just really keeping my mind open was one thing. But I really think, I was just thinking about this today. The biggest thing that she gave me was teaching me how to sell without selling, is what she would say. I was so uncomfortable with the sales process, the having a potential client, talking to them, trying to convince them to work with me. That was super uncomfortable for me. But she just helped me realize, like, you are serving these people, you just get to know them. And if they want to work with you, like, you offer them that opportunity. So just that whole process was really helpful, because I had no idea I didn't even know what I would do, like how I would go about that conversation. So that's been a piece that I've really continued over the past 4 years.
And when like she says niching down, do you mean specifically like maybe a sector of people that might be obese and they're trying to learn or lose, I should say, 50 plus pounds, or niching down in the sense of I only work with whatever a certain demographic, whatever it might be. Is that what she kind of took you and said? It's going to broaden your horizons if you kind of take on who you want to work with. If it's like, hey, I want to lose 5 pounds, or I want to just like, lower my blood pressure, whatever, My labs are fine. I just know I eat like crap. And I want someone to help me just write my diet, like these guys on the baseball team. Like, hey, I'm just not used to eating raw vegetables. Are they good for me? I don't know, but you tell me, like, can you help me put together something where I know at least I'm putting good things into my body? Because I know I'm not.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think because when I had first started, all of the dietitian business coaches out there were saying niche down to the point where you say, I only work with women age 25 to 35 who live in cities, who have a pet and want to lose 10 pounds and have tried every diet. And it's like all of these things. It's just like, drop all of that. So instead, what I like to do is my criteria for working for someone is that they're open to my approach, which is slow, steady. This is not this anti-diet. Like this is not going to be a diet. This results take a while, but they're gonna last. Another thing that I like working, clients, part of my ideal client is someone who likes to talk. Like nothing is worse when you have a client who's just not there, not talking. And that I enjoy spending, like speaking with them. Those are really the only three things. And that is not niching down at all. But it's served me well so far. And it's taken, I've had clients in their 80s and clients in their teens and men and women and all sorts of different things. So it's been fun. Like I've learned a lot on the way. And yeah, I'm glad I took her advice.
Oh no, it sounds like very sound advice, especially when you're getting started and you're like, I think most people would tell you you need like an avatar or a person that you're speaking to Jennifer and she's this age, like you said, maybe she's, losing 10 pounds, blah, 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 blah. But you're just talking to her, all your marketing, all your content, everything has to be talking to her, which to some degree, I guess there's something to be said for that if you're trying to be a very specific business, right? But for you took the opposite approach, and that's sort of, as you said, working out well. Did you focus a lot on like marketing and promotions in the beginning, or like was it word of mouth? Like how did you sort of, because again, some people say, well, I don't market, but I go and speak at, convention. You're like, well, it's sort of
That's marketing.
were it right?
Yeah.
Or are there things
Yes.
that you do that, whether it's paid or unpaid, that helps you sort of get yourself rolling? Because again, where do you go in 2020? You can't go to speaking conventions, you can't go to events, you can't go to meetups, anything. How did you sort of find that first client base before it grew?
I tried everything,
Mm.
everything, because it was my full-time job. I had nothing else going on and I had no clients starting off. So I did Instagram and I did Facebook. I did webinars. I did free Zoom classes. I cold called chiropractors in my area, sent out the emails. I reached out to every single person. I tried everything. And then I learned that, and this is part of a kind of a business coaching session. She said, try whatever you want to try, but be sure to reassess every once in a while and see what things are bringing me clients and what things do I have energy and passion behind. And drop the things that aren't bringing you clients and you don't have energy and passion behind, and put your focus on just a few things, 2 to 3 things. And that was really liberating for me. Was like, I don't need to do everything. And in fact, it's probably more beneficial if I put more energy into just a few things. So yeah, so those few things for me right now, 4 years later, would be my podcast. So I put a lot of energy into that, but that brings in a lot of clients and I really enjoy doing it. Collaborating with local gyms, like they'll send me a client, I send them some percentage, and also collaborating with local doctors. So those have really been the big things. I used to be big on Instagram, like I have to do it. And just in the last month or two, I really stopped. And that has been liberating me because I realized it wasn't bringing me as many clients as the other three things I do. And I wasn't enjoying it at all. So leave it. And now I can put more energy into the other things that I actually like doing.
Yeah, no, that's great. I talked before about this, but I read one time, if something feels is like heavy and light, if it feels heavy, it's like
Mm-hmm.
either delegate it to someone else or just drop it.
Yeah.
Get an assistant
Yes.
to do the Instagram for you, but you focus on the doctors and right, the chiropractor, whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you enjoy, but you might also be much better at, you know? And I
100%.
yeah, so I think that there's something to be said for there, and that's part of what talking to you is to sort of get into the mindset of like, you're building this business, which to me is really cool that, again, you're doing this during the pandemic. So
Sure.
it's pretty crazy, And but your mission, right? So I read on your site, it says to break free or help people break free from like the BS of diet culture. So I was going to ask you, like, what's like the biggest load of BS you see people falling for, and how do you sort of guide them back to like reality?
Yeah. So it's hard to say one thing because
Right,
on our
multiple.
podcast, RDs versus BS, we now have 110 episodes of 110 different BS things. But in general, what I find, just with humans and with clients is that the biggest BS is that people think that a diet is going to be their answer. Like they're told that you just got to try this one. And once you hit your maintenance weight, you'll be able to go back to eating the way you were before and just maintain it forever. And it's, saying it out loud sounds crazy, but this is really, diet culture has gotten into people's minds and has convinced them that this is true, that is true. And also that when you are a certain size, that you'll be happy, which is not the truth. Like happiness does not come from a number on the scale. So yeah, I think that is really the biggest BS without getting into like specific, like this is a BS diet, this is a BS
Sure.
supplement,
Yeah.
just that mindset in general. And that's why I really try to be anti-diet. Like I want to help you get healthy. I want to help you feel confident and all of that, but we're not going to do it quick because it's never going to last.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that there's a lot of people out there that say, okay, if I just get to this whatever goal, that's all this. It's like people with money, once I make this much money, I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to be happy. And it's like not necessarily or barely the case for most that you see out there.
Right.
And I think people also they get bombarded, I think, to a degree with conflicting advice. Like sort of like I mentioned, again, food pyramid when you were little, you saw this chart and it's like, okay, some people are like just flip it upside down, right? Some people will say, again, not calling out specific diets, but some even tell you like it might be egg whites versus okay, the yolks are fine for you. They're telling you now, depending on who you listen to. But like, what are some of the biggest misconceptions out there that you see going on in your industry that people listening could say, "Oh, okay, I get it. I always thought the opposite, or I always thought this was wrong."
Yeah. So I, uh, I want to answer one way, but I'm going to answer another way because I do believe that each person has a way of eating that works for them. And I think that's where the conflicting messages come in. Vegan does work for a percentage of the population, but it's not for everyone. So if anyone, if vegan works for you, great, but don't try to tell the world that they should all eat vegan. Same goes for the keto diet. Some people love it and it works so well for them, but that doesn't mean everyone in the world should be on the keto diet. I would say right now, the thing I'm seeing, I feel like every year in the new year, there's one diet that like really, comes, everyone's all excited about. And surprisingly, I feel like this year it's carnivore, the
Yes,
carnivore
I
diet,
agree.
where, yeah, it's meat, fish, eggs,
Caveman, yeah.
sometimes dairy. Yeah. And it's interesting to me. Like I really try to not judge because different ways of eating do work for different people. Like that's one that, the typical dietitian from school would be like, this is never going to work, but it does for some people. But my thing is like, don't, because it works for you, don't try to tell your sister and brother and best friend and parents and everyone around you that they have to now do it because everybody reacts very differently to different types of foods.
Yeah,
I don't know if that answered
no,
your
totally.
question, but that's where my mind went.
No, I that is a misconception. I think people are easily influenced again, like, whether it's something that pops up on their social media feed or a friend, you do put a lot of trust and value in your friends and family and their opinions. So like you said, you might have an uncle who can eat bacon and hamburgers every day and his cholesterol's fine. Right. But then you try it and you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like that, just because it works for that person does not mean it's going to be. But again, I think it's like you said, the people that are almost like pushing you into these things because it works for them can also have that adverse effect if they don't know that it actually doesn't work for you. So I think that's a great answer, because people think when they hear meat, they think red meat bad, or they think, right? I've even read recently that too many raw vegetables are not good for certain people, so
Yeah. Yeah.
when something you would think would be a no-brainer, like, oh, I can just eat lettuce and whatever, and then you're like, okay, maybe that's not as good as I thought, and then they should be roasted, or olive oil versus extra virgin olive. You can kind of like go, like we were talking offline before, hydrogen waters, versus the reverse osmosis, and there's so many different things that are coming at you, and you don't know what are marketing schemes versus, right, like, because whereas reverse osmosis water may not be bad for anyone. Okay, but do you need it? Well, it depends on your body, your biochemistry, I would assume. I think that that's actually a great answer because it resonates with me, because I'm hit with this stuff all day. I like to, you try to eat well, but again, like where I was raised, you inherently want to have those sort of comfort foods, I guess. But it's just it's sort of like you were lucky you had parents that were like, okay. And I thought my parents are both thin. It's not like they were, giving us McDonald's or fast food, or I should say, and sodas at all. It was just choice. Kids have a choice. And having said that, with all the social media and the sort of exercise gurus and nutrition gurus that you see coming at you from all angles, how do you, like, personally stay on top of like the nutritional science, the cutting edge, without getting lost in this like pseudoscience world for yourself personally and for your clients? Because again, they all have different situations that they're dealing with and coming to you for help.
Right. Yeah. So, as a registered dietitian, that's really part of our philosophy, is that every recommendation we make has to be based in science. And it doesn't just mean like one crazy like study that happened 50 years ago and hasn't been replicated. Like, people will say, I did my research. Well, it there's more than just like finding one little research study. It's complicated. That was pretty much all of grad school, is learning how to read research. So it's important, because, and that's why we started our podcast, RDs versus BS, because there are all of these questions. So just the podcast has helped me stay on top of things, because it forces me every week to take a topic and really do a deep dive into the research with that. Yeah, just it's in my nature as a dietitian. Whenever there's a question, like this week, our podcast episode was on cholesterol and eggs, and should you cut back on sugar, should you cut back on cholesterol, should you cut back on saturated fat, all of that. So we dive into the research, and you see, okay, the big research studies that take all of these different studies and put them in one, like with the most people, and they've been published in credible journals. What do they say? And so we go that route. Another thing that's popular throughout dietitians is creating journal clubs. So my friend Matt, who's the dietitian at LSU for the football team, he puts together like a journal review every month, and we all get together and we go through it. And so you kind of make it fun, because it's not super fun to be by yourself, like scrolling through all
Sure.
this research, but it's fun when you're with a group of friends and can just talk about what's new and upcoming. But yeah, it's part of being a dietitian. It's expected that you do that. And so it's just been fun to find fun ways to make it happen every week and every month.
Yeah, so I think that that's important too for people listening. Like, you want to make sure that you're getting the advice from someone like Emily, that actually is doing the research, because I'm sure a lot of it can go on autopilot for people in your field, where they just pick up one
Yeah.
blog or whatever, and they're like, okay, this is what I'm going to focus on with my clients. And you're like, wait a minute, you're actually doing the research and the work behind it, which is crucial, I think, because you like you said, it's a lifetime thing. It's not like you're just getting in shape for the summer.
Yeah. And I know it's frustrating for a lot of people to hear the recommendations change. Like, speaking of cholesterol, it used to be, don't eat too many eggs because eating too much cholesterol is bad. Now it's saturated fat. You don't have to worry about the cholesterol. So it changes a lot. I know that's frustrating, but that's just science. Like we learn more and then we make the best recommendation we can at this time. So yeah, the things that I believe and preach now, it's gonna change in 1 year and 5 years and 10 years because we're gonna get more research and more science, which is a good thing. But I get that the public, a lot of times they're like, how many times is this fat thing going to change? Like it's low fat, now it's high fat.
Right.
And I get it's frustrating, but that's just how it is.
Yeah, yeah, you get more research as time goes on. That's like it's all is what are you gonna do, you know? But about your podcast, right? So you co-host this podcast with RDs versus BS with Marie Pesacrita. What was the inspiration to start the podcast? Obviously, it sounds like you're giving these sort of like, hey, we researched this sort of BS fad or whatever, whatever you want to call it, that's a buzz that's going around right now, and sort of break it down for people. So like, what was the inspiration behind it as a business owner, right? As an entrepreneur. And then what do you hope like the listeners gain from tuning in to hear you and Marie?
Yeah. So it started as a just fun passion project with me and Marie. We met in grad school. We both worked at the Cubs together. She was with a different minor league team. So we've known each other for a while and both been in the sports nutrition world. And she reached out to me in 2020. It's COVID. And she said, I am sick and tired of answering the same questions over and over again about intermittent fasting and keto and paleo and all of these other things. She said, why don't we just start a podcast? So if someone asks, what do you think about fasting? Episode 23, intermittent fasting. Like, here you go. So it really just started for fun. Like, I didn't, at the time, I'd started my business, but I didn't even really think about it as, you could promote your business through here. Like, the first 50 episodes, we didn't even mention, like now we mention it, like we both accept clients virtually, blah, blah, blah. But for the first 50, it's just like, we're here for for fun. And it is still fun. We love doing it. It's that perfect crossover of, brings us business and something we get to enjoy and see each other and be up to date on research. So yeah, we really hope that listeners can listen to that and just get rid of some of the confusion. It is probably the number one thing that people will say to me. And I say, oh, why are you interested in working with a dietitian? Besides lose weight, that's probably number one. But the second is they're just confused. They don't know which way to turn because of all the reasons we said before, hearing different things. So yeah, just answering some of those questions and helping to demystify like the truth behind nutrition so that people have a place to turn if they are on Instagram and they see an ad for spice fruit, which is something we looked into recently. They could say, oh, Emily Marie had this episode on that. I'll listen to it and hear what the science says. It's always up to people as well. Like, as dietitians, we're science-based people, but you don't have to be. Like there are lots of people who have told us throughout the years that like we're crazy because the medical medium, I don't know if you've heard of him, he's healed so many people. So I don't care what your science says, and that's fine. Like we're not going to be for everyone, but for people who want answers through like science and research, then we're a way to get those answers.
No, that's great. And I think some people could be listening to you talk and saying, oh gosh, like that's amazing. So I can just go back 100 plus episodes and just see, oh, what's Emily's advice on, this or that, and get all this free advice. But it's also important to remember, like, yes, you're talking about the science and the numbers and the research you're doing. But again, it goes back to that everyone's different. So just because this is our opinion on this, maybe that doesn't mean it's going to exactly fit in with your specific plan, that you really do need to talk to you one-on-one. So it's great to get these like, your opinions and the research that you both have done, but they have to just realize it's not a one size fits all kind of plan.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really hard to give advice that is like a blanket advice for all people.
Yeah.
So we try not to too much. We try to just say, this is what research says, these are our thoughts. But yeah, doesn't mean that everyone should go out and start, I don't know, speaking of eggs, eating like 3 eggs a day, right? It depends. There's a lot of factors involved.
Yeah, intermittent fasting, whatever it might be. I guess what I'm just saying is like, it's amazing that you're like putting out all this free advice. to people. And it's also like people can take this, but then say, okay, how do I apply this specifically to me? Here's my blood sugar. Here's my cholesterol. Here's my this and this and this. Now take this advice you're giving out for free, but give me a specific plan. So I think you're kind of getting the best of both worlds by listening to what you're all talking about, but then coming to you one on one, if that makes better sense than I put it the first time.
No, absolutely. Yeah. No, then it's just kind of grown into that, which is, it works out really well. Like, I really do value the work that Marie and I have done. And just the emails you get from people saying, like, it finally makes sense. Thank you. Like, that's worth it enough. It's really amazing to hear from our listeners. Yeah.
Of course, yeah. I agree. Yeah, it's like getting that reinforcement, the positive reinforcement back from the people that you're making a difference. And it's not like you're making a difference in, like, I do architecture or I do making your kitchen look pretty. Like, you're making their insides look better, right? Like, so you're giving them like a lifelong sort of gift than just a one-off, like, hey, I did something for you that's lasts and goes away. This is like something they can apply this forever. So I think that's
That's the
huge.
goal.
Yeah. So, like,
Yeah.
okay, so you started the business. Obviously, the pandemic has to be a tough lesson, but how about as a business owner, other lessons that maybe, like, as a first time business owner you faced, and how did you sort of overcome them and sort of push forward to keep going? Again, pandemic, for sure. But besides that, when you're getting started, what were the sort of big hurdles?
A big hurdle for me was going from having a salary to having no salary,
Mm,
just
yes.
mentally.
Yes.
My whole life, I'd been used to money comes in no matter what I do, right? I just have to show up, really, for these salaried jobs. And now it's like every dollar you earn, you are working for. Like, it, which is great because there's no cap. You can make as much money as you want, but if you don't work, you don't make money. So that was quite the lesson, and just mentally to get used to that. That was a bit of a struggle for me. So was imposter syndrome. It just, dietitians in general were taught to kind of just serve and give and all of that. And dietitians do not get paid very much typically in like the hospital setting or anything. So to then go from that to, in order to make money and make this a livable salary that I'm now making, I need to charge a lot of money. And what money do you assign to the work you do? So that was a big lesson for me as well, as how much to charge and being comfortable with that. So it's not so much that no one says yes, but it's not so low that you're working 12 hours every single day just to make less than you made before. So that took some practice as well, but all of these lessons with time, any feeling of uncomfortability with the salary, with selling, with imposter syndrome, I feel like it does just diminish the more you do it. I still get, little blips of it here and there, but in general, over 4 years, it's definitely gotten a lot better.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer because, I think people don't realize going from a salary job to being an entrepreneur, it's tough. It can be a reality check when you're like, wait a minute, this was easier before because I had this income and I knew what my paycheck was going to be each week and I knew the taxes and I knew, right? And there'd be an increase at the end of the year and a 401k and all that kind of stuff. And now you're like, oh, it's just up to me now. I don't have this security that I had before I went, sort of freelance, business owner.
100%.
So, like, what if someone listening, and again, you mentioned, maybe they're not getting paid as much. What advice though would you have someone listening to the show, whether they're a business owner or maybe they want to be into the nutrition world like yourself, like, and they want to start something that you're doing, they want to be an RD. Like, what advice would you give to someone starting out now that you've been doing this? You've done it on the sort of like paid salary side. You worked in all these cool environments and with sports teams and things like that. Now you're doing it on your own. You've also gotten into sort of like, okay, I'm creating a persona. I have a podcast. I have, branding that's out there. What advice would you give those people that are sort of just kind of getting started and deciding whether to make that leap?
I don't know if this is great advice, but When you
That's
asked it, the
advice.
first
Yeah.
thing that came to mind was just do it. Like, unless it's going to totally bankrupt you and you'll be evicted from your house, just go for it. Because I meet with a lot of other life coaches and entrepreneurs who are, this is what they do now, is have their own business, and they're in their 60s and they just started and they said, I wish I did this 30 years ago. It is. And do it if you're sure that this is something that you want to at least try. I think something in my mind when I was going through this was, if I do this, this is the last choice I ever make. Like, I have to do this, but like for the rest of my life. But I think a good piece of advice is, like, you can try it, and if it doesn't work and if it's not for you, like, you could set a cutoff. Like, once I'll try it, once my bank account is below this, I'll go back and get a job again and make money. But you'll never know unless you try it. And if, like I said earlier, if it wasn't for the pandemic and moving to California, I probably still would be in my salaried job. But there is so much to be gained from being an entrepreneur, and the freedom, and just there's so many positives to the negatives that I said, like the salary and the, a lot of work. You have to do everything on your own. But for me, the pros outweigh the cons. So something I always tell people is, as long as the pros are outweighing the cons in your entrepreneurial journey, then stick with it. And if it's not, if there's more cons, you can go back and get another salaried job. Like, you're not locked into this.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, I think people can resonate with that, because I think a lot of it's just the fear. It's just oh, it's a risk. I don't know. How do I do it? How do I get the courage? You had a pandemic thrown at you. So, you never know what's going to happen just because you take
Right.
that chance.
Definitely.
Yeah. Like, I think that people listening are like, okay, if I want to jump into something, I'm not sure it's the best thing for me. But again, you don't want to wake up later in life and say, oh, I should have done this when I was in my 20s, in my 30s, whatever it might be, and didn't take the chance.
Right. Yeah. Definitely worth it to just try. And it's going to be uncomfortable, right? But kind of like what I was mentioning with the marketing before, like, try a bunch of things, but reassess. Do the same with this. If it's on your mind, you probably want to do it when it comes to, starting your own business, doing your own thing. So yeah, I would say, don't worry, like, jump into it, try it out. And also, I mentioned this earlier, but don't wait till everything's perfect to start. If it's one-on-one clients that you're doing, to start taking clients or to start making money, really. Because dietitians in general are very, like, type A, like, everything must be perfect. I have to have this many followers on Instagram and this many emails sent out before I think about taking on a client. Like, no, it's okay to do things before you're 100% ready. Just, you'll do it. Like, you'll get it. You'll learn along the way.
No, that's awesome advice. And how about for people listening? I know, we have the RDs versus BS podcast. Oh, how can people who I know you do televisits, things online, visits. How would you, suggest people that are like, okay, I'm in, like, I want to reach out to Emily, kind of get some one-on-one with you. How do they follow, connect with you, learn more about your business and all that kind of good stuff?
Yeah. So, like you mentioned, the podcast is a great way. RDs versus BS podcast. You can find it pretty much anywhere there are podcasts. I have an Instagram, though I know I said I stopped posting, but I think there's 1,000 posts on there. So
Oh, okay.
lots of good, nutrition information. If you want to kind of learn more about what, just nutrition in general, and kind of my philosophy and style when it comes to nutrition. So my Instagram is Emily_RD_. And then I also have a website, emilyzorn.com, Zorn. And there's a bunch of information on there as well. And for all new clients, I have a free 30-minute intro session. So you can sign up for one of those at emilyzorn.com as well.
Cool. No, that's great. And I think people should be encouraged to check out all the cool stuff you are doing. And no, I really appreciate your time today, getting to know you, getting to learn more. I mean, I'm going to go check out your podcast just
Awesome.
to see what I can get out of things that I'm curious about. And I think for people listening, just breaking down how you started this business and how it's grown just because you kind of went for it. So and things you were thrusted into and forced into, which shows the resilience, and you do the work. You really study your craft, and you're all behind the science. And I think that it's really inspiring to hear. So thanks for sharing that story, and for taking the time to talk today and getting to know you. So everyone, check out Emily online, and her podcast. And thanks again for your time today.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Joe.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode of Experience Curve. Please take the time to share this podcast with a friend or colleague to help get the word out about my show.